What I just done read.
Hello, and welcome back, or welcome to, should I say, the all-new What I Just Done Read. This is a review show that's designed to give a fair airing to books of all ages, not just those currently gracing the bestsellers or the new releases lists that, let's face it, are probably only there because they tick the right political boxes. And on this episode, we will be, well, I think Paddy Constantine said it better than me, so take it away, Paddy.
Oh, murder, murder, murder.
Thank you. Yes, we will be talking about... Where's it gone? It's over here. Yes, we will be talking about Richard Osman's first best-selling novel, The Thursday Murder Club. But before we do that, we have, of course, the business of our word of the day. And keeping in line with the theme of today's episode, we have for your consideration, chance medley. So this is an Anglo-French word that dates from sometime in the 15th century and was certainly in common usage by the English law system during the 17th and 18th centuries. Earlier than that, 16th and 17th centuries. And basically it refers to, I suppose today we'd kind of, no, not really. I was going to say death by misadventure, but it's not exactly that. It refers to a chance homicide that has resulted from an unexpected fight. is the description that I've got for it. Refers to the murder or homicide resulting from a sudden fight or quarrel. But yeah, no, apparently it is synonymous with the term death by misadventure. That seems appropriate for this one. So if you're looking for something to spice up your own whodunnit, there we go, chance medley. Take that one, make it your own, give it some love, and all of that kind of thing. So before we go on to the book, yes, as I said, this is, ta-da, the new setup. A quick thank you to my friend Bridget for this wonderful, I want to call it a reader's bookcase, not to be confused with readers' wives. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I grew up in the 80s. This meant something to us back then. Let's carry on. But yeah, as you can see, I've got a few things here. I've even managed to get my entire collection so far of the Pan Books of Horror there. There's some other books here that I have absolutely nothing to do with whatsoever. And then some homes in the corner because why not? So this is where we will be from this point forward. I've procrastinated enough. Let's leap into our bullet point biography. So, Richard Osman, born on the 28th of November 1970 to David Osman and Brenda Wright in Billericay in Essex, although he would go on to spend most of his childhood in Haywards Heath in West Sussex. Richard and his brother Matt were raised predominantly only by their mother, as when Richard was 9 years old, his father quit the family home. His brother Matt would go on to be, he is a novelist now as well. I did mean to double check what the title of his brother's book is. I'm sure somebody will fill in my gaps, as it were, but his brother Matt is probably best known as the bass player for the band Suede. Richard Osman studied politics and sociology at Trinity College, Cambridge, and interestingly, in one of those little twists of fate, was actually there at the same time as his co-host from the game show Pointless, Alexander Armstrong, who was studying English. I'm going to inject into this point here and say that most of the stuff that I found out about him is pretty much what's available online. I did reach out to Richard's publicist to see if he'd be willing to, have a little chat with us, but I haven't heard anything back from them by the time of this recording, so you had your chance, mate. Previously, Richard Osman has stated that his prodigious height, at standing at 6'7", is one of several reasons why he failed in his attempt to pursue a career as a spy with MI6. Richard is a lifelong sufferer of the debilitating eye condition nystagmus, which causes an involuntary movement of the eyes. As a result, during his career as a presenter, he's had to learn most of his scripts off by heart, as he finds it very difficult to read any kind of auto cue or auto prompt. He's been married twice and has 2 children from his first marriage and is currently married to actress and comedian Ingrid Oliver of the comedy duo Watson and Oliver, who I must admit, I'm sorry, I don't know. But then again, I don't watch terrestrial TV because TV license is a crime. So yeah, I don't support that. So that's probably why I've never heard of them. Although I do know who she is because she appeared as and for me personally, I think rather superfluous and unnecessary legacy character, Petronella Osgood in New Who. Which's production credits date back to the mid-90s and include such shows as Whose Line Is It Anyway?, The Adam and Joe Show, Boys Unlimited, which I've never seen, 8 out of 10 Cats, and Total Wipeout as well as obviously his presenting credits, best known for things like Pointless, as we've already mentioned, The One Show, he's hosted that on occasion, and also his own show, Richard Osman's House of Games, as well as a plethora of non-presenting guest appearances on British television. Richard's literary works include both fiction and non-fiction. On the non-fiction side, he's authored 5 books related to the game show Pointless, which he co-authored with Alexander Armstrong, as well as having released a book that's related to his other show, Richard Osman's House of Games. In terms of his fiction work, not surprisingly, today's book was his first novel, which has been followed up by 3 other novels. They should be on screen for you now, with a 5th that is due out in September this year. I thought I had the second one of these. I've actually got the third one of these as well. So, we'll see how things go, but I will hopefully be sort of pursuing these for the show over the next few months, years. I don't know. He has also started another series of books as well. Clearly, murder is a thing for him, because the first book of that was called We Solve Murders, which was released in 2024. Again, it's been released as the first in a new series, so I don't know anything about that, but again, it might be worth a look at some point as well. And of course, if you hadn't already guessed by the timing of this video, the Thursday Murder Club has been turned into a new film for Netflix.
Who is us? I'm sorry, how rude of me. We're the Thursday Murder Club.
But actually in conjunction with Spielberg's company Amblin Entertainment, directed by Chris Columbus, starring Helen Mirren, Pierce Brosnan, Ben Kingsley and Celia Imrie as the titular Thursday Murder Club. Let's go to the blurb. Well, I was going to go to the blurb, but there is no blurb. There is actually in here, I'll come to that in a second. All it says is 4 unlikely friends, a shocking murder, welcome to the Thursday Murder Club. And then a series of soundbites by various reviewers and critics. The only one that I was going to mention, which is probably a good introduction to this one, here is by a guy called Adam Kay, who said, funny, clever, and achingly British. But yeah, so there's a little bit of blurb on the inside cover here, and it says, in a peaceful retirement village, 4 unlikely friends meet up once a week to investigate unsolved murders. When a brutal killing takes place on their very doorstep, the Thursday Murder Club find themselves in the middle of their first live case. Elizabeth, Joyce, Ibrahim and Ron might be pushing 80, but they still have a few tricks up their sleeves. Can our unorthodox but brilliant gang catch the killer before it's too late? So yeah, just to expand a bit more on what's there on the blurb. As it says, this is predominantly centred around this small retirement village, which is called Cooper's Chase, which is very much a retirement village for those who have managed to retain onto a degree of their affluence. Most of the people that seem to come and stay here are not short of a bob or two, to quote Tom Baker.
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
And the place itself is just outside the town of Fairhaven in Kent. Going into a bit more like our characters, just to give you a bit more of an idea of who they are. The kind of de facto leader, if you like, of the Thursday Murder Club is Elizabeth, who has something of a shadowy past, possibly related to work with British intelligence.
Who do you think you are, the head of MI5?
Then we have Ron Ritchie, who is very clearly Osman's insert for the likes of Ken Livingstone. They even refer to him in the book as Red Ron. And then we have Ibrahim, who's again a bit more mysterious. He doesn't really dwell too much on his past. To the point, and again, unless I missed it and skipped over it, don't actually recall it stating what Ibrahim's sort of work life or his background was. I get the impression that he was either a university professor, possibly a statistician. He's very much like the numbers man, if you like. And then we have Joyce, who is the newest member of the club, who is a retired nurse.
Bang on target.
And she's also very much the audience's or the reader's entry into the action as the newcomer, as it were. And he also incorporates that into the narrative by certain chapters are excerpts from Joyce's diary, which again work quite well and again do make the book feel a little bit more accessible. Beyond our core quartet, there are a few other secondary characters and tertiary characters as well that Osman does flit between in the narrative, and so we can see things from their perspective as well. Most notably would be there's two police detectives, or a police detective and a police constable, who are on the case on the police side investigating the murder, who have some kind of tenuous links already to the home, which again is all explained in the book, and I don't want to really kind of give that away. But again, they add that nice element to it, so you were always aware that, as we're kind of increasingly finding in this country, the long arm of the law is never far away. But they do work really well, and they're a nice addition to the book in general, and it does help flesh out this world that Osman's created. That's pretty much all I want to say at this point about the book on the whole. It's always a bit difficult when you're doing something like this, like a murder mystery, about knowing how much to say and how much not to say. I will just very quickly talk about the product itself. I don't think this is a first edition. I'd be surprised if it was. Yeah, it looks like this is a second edition. And again, it's a decent enough hardback. Dust jacket's okay. Sorry. I don't know, I like foxes, so the little fox motif is quite nice. It does suffer, as again a lot of these books do tend to these days, with lots of superfluous paper that could have had words on it, but no. Obviously just there to help push up the price. But again, yeah, I like a hardback. It's a decent hardback, I suppose, although, like most modern stuff, it's a bit mass-produced. So I doubt it will have the longevity of some of the older hardbacks that I have. But yeah, I don't really have that much to say about the product. Text is nice and clear, font is fine. There's some very slight use of variation in terms of font styles and things like that. Mostly with the chapter titles that are for Joyce's diaries, they tend to be in italics. But beyond that, there's not much more to say. As always, I will have some things to say about my own thoughts and feelings and whether or not I think it's worth a read. But before I do that, I am going to do the thing that I always do. I'm going to go and play with some eyes. Yeah, you should probably be disturbed. I am. I'm disturbed myself. What am I going to say? I suppose the only thing I can say is while I'm gone, don't turn round! He's behind you! Xadrum is more than just curious content on YouTube. We're also a small publishing house, with books covering a range of genres from 1940s pulp adventure to children's novels, and even a touch of the macabre for those who like their literature on the dark side. Our titles are available in both paperback and ebook formats. Ebooks are available on Amazon, but physical copies can only be bought exclusively through our website at xadrum.com. Jeff's got enough cash as it is, so why not help us little guys grow and thrive? Links can be found in our banner and in the description to all of our videos, and we look forward to helping you indulge your itch for escapism. There we go, that was reasonably quick and painless. We will come to those in a hot minute. Not to be confused with Hot Mary. No, sorry.
Garbage can peeking in on Hot Mary and her boyfriend.
So, is Richard Osman's debut novel any good? It's clear that Osman's work as a writer for TV has come through in this book. Everything feels like it's geared to a more visual medium. Especially the humour. I'd say. But also, as the action kind of picks up and kind of barrels towards its conclusion, and the well-placed and I would say well-used red herrings start coming thick and fast for you as the reader, again, the way that's done, you can almost picture it working very well on screen. I'm not going to say better on screen than in print, but again, it does feel like it's more... It feels almost cinematic in that sense. It will be interesting to see how that's translated into the Netflix movie, especially as that, I understand, the screenplay for that wasn't written by Osman. It'll be interesting to see how they translate that, and if, how close to the mark I managed to get with that one. Although that said, this does kind of slightly run the risk of making the work feel a little predictable. Not in terms of the specifics of the narrative itself, or of the story itself, should I say, but more in its adherence to the kind of narrative conventions that you would associate with a whodunit or a murder mystery. Overall, the plot and the pacing, are pretty solid. And are pretty good, and I enjoyed it. There's a few lulls here and there that I thought were a little bit awkward, but nothing that should sort of dissuade you from reading it. Now, the characters, for the most part, are, pretty well realised and well developed. I did particularly like the character of Ron Ritchie, or Red Ron. I thought there was some nice subtle things put in there. Obviously, you've got this aged socialist who was at one point in his earlier life one of the standard bearers for the 80s and 90s communist movement in the UK. And yet you find him here amongst all of these retired one-percenters. And there's just that little bit of champagne socialism creeping in there with him. And again, as I said, it's quite subtly done, and I did think that was quite clever. As a little bit of an aside at this point, I wanted to mention there was a weird kind of feeling of deja vu and almost familiarity with this book. And it took me like I got about quarter of the way through before I realised what it was. And because this is set in a retirement home, and because of like the when you look at the sort of the base level of the motivations of some of the characters, it's actually very similar to a short film that I was involved with back in 2011 called The Grey Mile. My role in it wasn't huge. I was one of a pair of enforcers, if you can believe that. But the whole thing was set in a retirement home, and the two principal characters, again, interestingly enough, a retired professor who had links to British intelligence, who was played by the great Murray Melvin, and in place of our socialist Red Ron, we had Terry the Taxman, who was a former salt-of-the-earth gangster, who was played in his last screen performance, the late great Paul Shane. The story wasn't the same, it wasn't a murder thing, but there was this mystery that these two old men had to pool their respective talents and resources to try and figure out. And again, as I said, I saw sort of similarities in that with this. And I suppose on a slightly more tangential note, it also made me think of one of the most recent, a recent highly underrated movie. If you haven't seen it, I do highly recommend you check it out, which is Bubba Hotep, starring Bruce Campbell.
Don't make me use my stuff on you, baby.
But I digress. In terms of negatives, there's not many, and again, they're not huge things. I would say that about the first quarter of the book does feel like you're reading somebody's first novel. There is very much the suggestion that this is a novelist still finding his own style. And yeah, as I say about the first quarter of the book, it doesn't feel like the novel is comfortable in the skin that it's in, if you see what I mean. Again, as things grow and develop, and as he gets into the meat of what he wants to deliver with the novel, that does fade away.
I'm going to tell you how it's going to be.
But yeah, those first sort of 7,500 pages, you do feel like you're reading somebody's first work. There's some repetition in here, in one thing in particular, and again, as I say, I have to be careful what I say because I don't want to give away spoilers. But yeah, there's certain actions taken by one of the characters about midway through the book, and then those actions are essentially repeated by another character towards the end of the book. And it's never actually presented as there's no kind of foreshadowing or there's nothing that links these two things. They're completely separate of each other. And it did feel a little bit like, come on, Richard, you're clearly a very intelligent and very talented man. if you'd written yourself into a corner, I think you could have written yourself out of it a bit better than you have. I mean, there's only really sort of two significant gripes that I have. One of them is actually with the character of Elizabeth herself. Now, I'm not going to hand wave and say, oh yeah, she's a girl boss, because she isn't. But you're never in any doubt that in a lot of cases she's already got the answer, she's just waiting for the evidence to prove herself right. I don't know, that just felt a bit flat for me. I think I just found that made her feel a little bit two-dimensional. There was something about it that just left me feeling cold. And that's actually probably the best way to do it. Yeah, there's something cold and dispassionate about her. That doesn't make her, for me, it made me struggle to believe in her as a character. Which is odd, because being cold and dispassionate never did any harm to, arguably, the greatest detective who never lived, Sherlock Holmes. And yet, Holmes always felt more believable because there's a underlying vitality to him, and he has these bursts of manic energy.
No. You couldn't have come at a better time.
Whereas what I found with Elizabeth in this is she very rarely, as a character, moves out of second gear. And it was a real shame because I really want to like this character. And there's some lovely work that Osman's done there's some lovely kind of quite poignant moments where Osman chooses to sort of delve into the other side of this novel, and that's addressing the fact that most of these characters are bordering on being octogenarians, and the ever-present presence of death of a more natural cause. And this is one of the characters that seems to dwell on that a lot more. So you'd think there's some nice depth and some nice pathos there, and yet there's just something missing. I don't know what it is.
It is quite a three-pipe problem.
I'd be interested to see if this is something that he addresses and corrects, in later books in the series. My biggest gripe, though, I think, is with it's a certain aspect of the end of the book, of the conclusion of the book. Again, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I can't tell you what it is, because it's, as I've said throughout this entire thing, I'm trying to avoid spoilers. In the most unspoilerish way that I can say, certain things happen towards the end of the book that, for me, fundamentally undermine the point, purpose, and the morality of the Thursday Murder Club as a group. And I'm like, okay. And that's what you're going to go with, is it? I'm not sure I can understand it, but I'm not sure that's sending the right message. That's all I'm going to say. If you've read the book, then you probably know what I'm talking about. And obviously, if you do want to discuss that, you can DM me on the Xadrum Facebook page or on the Xadrum Instagram channel, and we can have a chat about it, because I'll be interested to see what other people think. But no, that for me was like, and it made the book feel anticlimactic, which is a shame, because otherwise, generally speaking, I would recommend it. I think it's a decent enough whodunit. There's some nice characters in it. I'm not going to say it's a fantastic, amazing book, but it's enjoyable. As a summer read, possibly. Check it out. Again, especially with the film just having come out, so you can compare and contrast the two. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I've got to say about it. We can now move on to the all-important eyes. And not surprisingly, they're talking amongst themselves. This one is going to get very middle of the road. There we go, a 3i for each. As I said, it's a decent enough hardback, but again, too much wasted space. And as I said, content-wise, there's some lovely stuff in here, but there's a few things that I just thought, makes it feel a bit mid, I'm afraid. So this one can now be removed from the list, wherever it is. There it is. Thursday Murder Club, can you see that? Make sure we get the right one. There we go. That one has been done to death. As you can see, they're also on there. I do have, there was the only ones that I could find at the time that I knew about. I do have the second and third one on there as well. I will get round to those at some point, but not just yet. We have other fish to fry. Or, as the case may be, as I've been meaning to do for a while, I do want to go back to the older part of the list. So we are going to come down to here with a book that I've been... Oh! Before we do that, new thing for this. As you can see down here, I have managed to find, or pull out, most of the books that I've already read for the show. So we can now add this one to the collection in the most awkward place possible. There. Ta-da! So yes, on to what we're going to be looking at next. And this one is from the older part, from the original part of my list. And it's one that I've had for a while, and I keep putting off, and it's like, no, I really need to jump into this, in the hopes that I will have it ready by Halloween. And this is The Night Side of Nature by Catherine Crowe. It's a book that I only learnt about a few years ago, published originally in 1848, and this was the first concerted effort to make a scientific approach to spooks, spectres, and the paranormal. So this is one I've been looking forward to reading for a while. As I say, hopefully I should be able to get this one done and dusted by the time we get around to spooky season proper. So yeah, I'm going to dive into this one as soon as possible, and until the next time, as always, please do look after yourselves, look after one another, and I'll be seeing you. Delves into the other side of this book is the fact that they are all borderline ocular jocks.
Wow, 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 wow.
Where Osman chooses to